So one character that I feel really bad for within Wistoria is obviously Wignall. His backstory is him trying to pretty much live a normal life with his elf sisters and brothers and everyone until one day the Celestials attack, forcing them to flee their homeland and come to this new world. In this new world, pretty much elves are looked upon as one of these higher beings because of their magic that they obtain. And through that, the elves are now having to pick people to go into the tower. Pretty much every elf gets into the tower because of their extremely well-equippedness with magic. And they continue pushing forward and pushing forward and pushing forward. But there's one elf that is constantly banned, and that's Wignall. And that's because he's considered a failure to his own race because of his inability to use illusion magic. And just like Will, Wignall is just trying to get through the tower so that he can go and visit his younger sister. His younger sister is Eleanor, a very talented elf mage who is able to make illusions so much into reality that she can make a small illusion appear to be a giant illusion and a giant illusion to appear to be small, because the elf specialty is illusion magic. In this world, Eleanor is a Magna Veda and the leader of the elf faction. She's also the queen of the elves. But here's the biggest problem with that. All the elves consider Wignall a failure. And remember when Wignall said that in elf culture, if you are considered unworthy, you are not allowed to touch anybody? Wignall himself is considered unworthy by every elf to touch anybody. So whenever he is around his own kind, he cannot so much as shake someone's hand or put his hand on someone's shoulder because they deem him unworthy of touching them. Every elf in this world besides Wignall that has went to the academy has been automatically upgraded to the upper institute within their first year. Wignall had to actually go through the academy and do all the stuff in the academy to even get up to the upper tower. When it came down to everything he had to go through, including the proxy exam, meeting someone who was considered a failure like him, meeting someone that he considered worthy of touching him, meeting friends and going the distance, there was not a person who I considered more skilled than Wignall, especially coming from someone who was considered a failure by his race to someone who ended up protecting people in a dungeon. But even after proving himself and getting to the upper institute and proving himself to his own race, they still look at him as a failure because of how long it took him to get there. The fact that he wasn't able to be skipped in his first year, and when they finally got to the upper institute, he wasn't someone that was immediately picked, but they picked him because of his race. And when they ended up bringing him to the elf faction, they put a fucking slave collar on my boy's neck. And even though Wignall is part of a faction, he is treated like a colorless. A colorless is someone who is a cog in the system, someone who is upgraded to the upper institute, but was never chosen for a faction. So he's not really treated like a faction member, but more as a servant, someone who's going to get tea and coffee. And even though he's training his abilities and trying his best to do everything to prove to his sister that not only is he worthy of being there, but he's worthy of being an elf, he's constantly being put down by not only his sister, but the rest of his race. Wignall has an incredibly tragic story outside of everything that we know about what's going on. So Eleanor treats her own brother as someone who is not even worthy enough to touch her. The entire race looks down on him because of his ability to use magic. And Wignall himself is constantly having to prove himself. And even when he gets to the next level where he should feel accomplished, they look at that accomplishment as a joke. Wignall deserves better.